Hey folks, welcome back. In this video, we're going to create two brushes that we're going to use in subsequent videos to practice some digital drawing fundamentals. So the first brush that we're going to create will give us this ability to create this really nice pencil brush, and we can use that for sketching. The second brush that we're going to create is more of a shader brush. And we can use this brush when we're shading certain areas. So if we're trying to mimic the idea of working with a pencil and working with something that has got a little bit more softness to it, like if you're trying to smudge or do something with kind of when you're blending in values, that's what this secondary brush is going to entail. And the good news is you don't have to download any brushes. These are all provided for you for free. We're just going to make some modifications to them so that we can make them work really well. Before we begin, make sure that your default swatches, the colors that you have on the toolbar, are set to black as the foreground and white as the background. An easy way to do that is to hit the D key, default. That will turn whatever colors you currently have into black as a foreground and white as a background. Then what we're going to do is we're going to hit the B key for activating our brush tool, and we're going to go up to our brush menu and we're going to choose hard round pressure size located underneath general brushes. And I have a few parameters here that I need to go back and reset. And so when I pick that particular brush, you can see that I have something like this. And this brush is ridiculously big. So I'll just make it somewhat small. And I'll just double check and check the size. So this is what it looks like typically by default. What we're going to do is we're going to take that default brush and we're going to turn it into a pencil brush. We're going to do a couple of things. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set the opacity to about 50%. You can just type in the number or use the slider. And when I do that, you can see that the line is still there, but basically instead of black, it's now kind of a grayish value. And then we're going to alter the flow. We're going to set the flow to 20%. And by doing so, basically that flow has to do with the amount of quote-unquote ink that your stylus is dispensing. So it has to do with how much is coming out. It's not really coming out of the stylus, but that's the best way I can kind of explain it. If you have a fountain pen or if you have a felt tip marker, right, and you're pressing down on a sheet of paper, flow has to do with the amount of ink that's being dispensed depending upon how much pressure you're pushing down on that particular marker. So I've got this nice buttery line that I can work with. And we're going to do one more thing. We're going to go up to the brush options menu. We're going to take a look at the brush tip shape. We're going to set the angle to roughly 42, 43 degrees. You can see that has a little bit of a alteration of our brush itself. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the one of the 2 points that's on this area and just turn it from a circular shape to a more elliptical shape. And this gives us this really nice feathery feel. So we've got our pencil brush taken care of. What we can do now is we can save this, and it's a good idea to save this as a tool preset as opposed to a brush preset. There's nothing wrong with the brush preset, but the tool preset just gives you quick access from the tool preset menu, which is what I prefer. So again, if you go to Window and you go to Tool Presets, you will see all of the existing presets that you may or may not currently have on your version of Photoshop. So in order to save this particular brush out, I'm going to go up to the hamburger menu and I'm going to choose Tool Preset. Now, typically when you do this, you'll see a dialog box that pops up. And this dialog box will give you the choice between saving the brush that you've made as a brush preset instead of a tool preset. And because I've turned that off, there's a checkbox that you can turn that off. I've already done so because I prefer to save these brushes as tool presets. And what you can do then is you can just give it a name. I like to use my initials so I can keep track of things. Let's call this pencil sketch brush, something like that. And I can choose include color, and it will take that black color. So every time I select this brush, it will basically give me these properties. You can see that that brush shows up under my tool presets. Makes it very easy for me to get to Now, if you saved it as a brush preset, you would have to go into this particular menu and find it, or you would have to go into brushes and you'd have to look for it there. There's really nothing wrong with that. I guess if you're a more visual person, you might appreciate having these previews. But for me, I have a lot of brushes and I use some of them more than others. So I just prefer to have something that's cleaner. That's why I prefer the tool preset option. So I've got my pencil brush taken care of, using the built-in brushes that are already there within Photoshop. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to create a shader brush. And this shader brush, just let me show you what this is going to look like. As I start to press down, we're seeing that this is giving us a softer type of feel to that brush. And we're going to use that to help us understand how to create a value gradient, which is going to be important when it comes to shading things. So let's see how we're going to make that brush. So what we're going to do again is, once again, make sure that the default brush is set to black. We're going to go up to our menu. We're going to choose soft round pressure, opacity, and flow from the brush selection option. And I'm going to make sure that that is in fact selected. I'm going to dial the brush size to about roughly 200-ish. I can type that number in. And then for the opacity and the flow parameters, you can keep the 70 and the 20%. And what we're going to do is when we start to use this, we can see that as I start to go over the same region, we're getting something that's progressively darker. And I can now save this as a tool preset as well. I can just call this my initials shader brush. And now I have access to that particular brush as well. So we can use this brush just as a very simple example here. If I have that brush active, I can make the brush just a little bit bigger than this rectangular selection. And as I start to press down, it gets darker. And what you're trying to practice is you're trying to get a value gradient that looks smooth, where you're going from black to dark gray, to medium gray, to light gray, to white. So something like this, where you're not seeing any banding. There's a little bit of a banding here where you can see this going from a dark gray to a light gray. You want to try to avoid that. You want to see if you can get this to blend. And having that flow set up correctly allows the ink to not just dispense at once. It's kind of an additive effect. And it takes a little bit of practice to get this down, but you can certainly do it. So we have this value gradient here. So that's the video. In the next video, I'm going to share with you how you can use this pencil brush that we've just created to create some volumetric shapes. And you can save this brush out. You know, the tool presets, you can save all of your tool presets out by just going out to Save Tool Presets. Make sure that you select the brush that you want to save as a tool preset, and you'll get a dialog box. Actually, in this case, it's going to save all of our tool presets. So you want to go ahead and save it to a space where you can have access to it again. I've already done that, so I don't need to do that for this particular video, but you have quick and convenient access to your often used brushes, which I think is fantastic. So thanks for watching the video. If you found some value in it, please consider giving it a like so more folks can find it. And stick around. I hope that you do, because we're going to start talking about some digital drawing fundamentals that I think will help improve your digital art game. See you next time.